They laughed when she showed up to boot camp with a frame that didn't fit their idea of a soldier and a silence that made her easy to ignore, but laughter has a way of choking itself when truth walks into the room. And when the commander saw the tattoo on her back and went perfectly still, every rule, every secret, and every lie buried in that base began to surface. If you want stories where first impressions collapse and hidden histories detonate when you least expect them, subscribe now, because this is where the untold versions finally get spoken. Story, single plain paragraph. They mocked her from the first minute she stepped onto the cracked concrete of the parade ground, boots half a size too big because supply was short again and the quartermaster didn't care, hair pulled tight, eyes forward. Name stitched crookedly on her fatigues as if even the thread didn't quite believe she belonged, and the nicknames came fast and lazy because boot camp always needed a target and she was quiet enough to accept the role, or so they thought. The instructors letting it happen because humiliation had always been part of the filtering process and laughter was cheaper than discipline, and she learned quickly that silence was lighter to carry than anger, so she ran when told, lifted when ordered, took the insults like rain that soaks you through without making a sound, while at night in the barracks the others compared bruises and futures and hometown legends. And she lay on her bunk staring at the underside of the mattress above her, counting breaths, remembering a different set of rules learned long before uniforms, remembering a promise made to a woman whose voice still echoed in her bones. A promise that had nothing to do with proving anything to anyone here, because this place was not the destination but a necessary door, and doors were meant to be opened without announcing yourself, and the days stacked up. Dawn whistles and sweat and the smell of disinfectant and metal, the instructors rotating like weather systems, some cruel, some tired, all convinced they had seen every variation of weakness, and still the jokes followed her, about her build, about her refusal to talk back, about the way she never flinched when shouted at but also never smiled when praised. Until the first twist arrived quietly during an obstacle course when a heavier recruit slipped from a rope and panic rippled through the line and before anyone could shout she moved, not fast in a flashy way but precise, anchoring, positioning bodies the way she had been taught years ago without names for the techniques, redistributing weight, using leverage instead of strength. And the recruit was hauled back with seconds to spare, and afterward there were mutters. Not apologies, just confusion, because competence without explanation unsettles people more than failure ever could, and the instructors took note, marking something invisible on their clipboards, and the mockery thinned but did not disappear. It hardened instead, turned sharper, because now she was a question, and questions make insecure people angry. And then came inspection day when everything slowed down. The commander himself present because the unit was slated for something classified and leadership wanted eyes on the raw material, and inspection meant shirts off, spines straight, vulnerabilities exposed under fluorescent light. And when it was her turn she complied like always, pulling fabric over her head, and that was when the air changed, because across her upper back, clean lines and faded edges telling a story of age and intention. Was a tattoo no one expected to see on a recruit, not a random symbol or rebellious art but an insignia so old it was never meant to be worn openly, a mark associated with a program that officially did not exist anymore. A symbol whispered about in after-action reports and redacted files, and the commander froze, not metaphorically but physically, breath caught, eyes locked, because he had seen that mark once before in a place that had never left him. On a soldier who had saved his life and then vanished from every record, and the room held its breath as authority cracked for the briefest moment, instructors glancing at each other, recruits sensing the shift without understanding it. And she stood still, eyes forward, because this too had been anticipated, this recognition, this pause, and later, behind closed doors, the questions came not as accusations but as careful probes, and she answered only what was necessary. Confirming lineage without giving names, explaining that the tattoo was not earned by bloodshed but by guardianship, by training passed down when institutions failed and small circles kept knowledge alive, and the commander listened. A man accustomed to control realizing he was standing in the presence of a different kind of discipline, one that did not need ranks, and the second twist unfolded when records were quietly adjusted. not to elevate her publicly but to place her where she could be observed without interference. Advanced drills disguised as remedial training, psychological evaluations that turned into conversations. And the mocking recruits noticed that the rules bent around her in subtle ways, that she was pulled aside not for punishment but for briefings, that instructors stopped shouting her name and started using it correctly. And resentment flared until another incident forced the truth closer to the surface during a night exercise gone wrong when communication failed and panic spread and the chain of command hesitated, and she stepped into the gap, organizing movement, calming fear, making decisions that prioritized lives over pride, and afterward when the dust settled the commander made a choice that became the third twist. He told the instructors to stop trying to break her and start learning from her, quietly. Unofficially, because whatever she was exactly what the upcoming operation would require, and the final twist arrived not in glory but in restraint, when the others finally learned enough to stop mocking and start watching. When respect replaced fear not because of the tattoo but because of consistency, because she never used her advantage to dominate, never revealed more than needed, and when graduation day came and names were called and futures assigned. Hers was absent, not because she failed but because she was already elsewhere, reassigned to a corridor that did not appear on maps, and the commander watched her leave, understanding that some legacies do not want monuments, they want continuity. And long after the laughter faded from that parade ground, the recruits who had once mocked her told new arrivals about the day a commander froze, about the silence that followed, and about the lesson they learned too late. That you never really know who you are standing next to until the moment demands the truth.